Om Tare Du Tare Du Re Soha. Om Tare Du Tare Du Re Soha. Om Tare Du Tare Du Re Soha. Om Tare Du Tare Du.
All right, here we are, Wednesday night. I'm just so delighted that we have this opportunity to fully engage in this incredible series of teachings that was brought together by the Thubten Chödron and His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, as well as many others that they've collaborated with, and unpack really the whole stages of the path of awakening, these precious teachings, a complete Buddhist path, and done so in a way that people in more modern times and in the West can access it and make sense of it in ways that are really meaningful and applicable to us. So we've already have had a few sessions placing Buddhism in a context, understanding some of the core principles of Buddhism, what it is and what it is not, how it differs from religions in some capacity, how it differs from science, how it differs a little bit from philosophy, and that it doesn't really fit in those categories. We in the West, we have categories, we have boxes. And so instead of thinking of Buddhism as a philosophy or as a religion or as a mind science, it's Buddhism, which has some aspects of philosophy, some aspects of religion, some aspects of science of the mind, and not, any one of those things fully. And how this then, when we think about Buddhism, understanding that the Buddha did not teach the origin of the world, didn't teach creation. Matter of fact, one of the key things that was pointed out is we don't need to know how everything started to know how to free ourselves from suffering. Essentially, the Buddha taught how to not suffer. And so in order to do that, he looked at causes of suffering, causes of happiness. And as we discussed, one of the big aha sort of questions is, if we all seek happiness and if we all seek to avoid suffering, and we're smart, we're intelligent, we have resources, we're capable, why does our mental emotional suffering and struggles and things increase when we would like it to decrease? And why are we stuck in situations, even no matter how good our life gets? How do we still get stuck in anger, resentment, frustration, insecurity, fear? It's fascinating that we can be insecure. When you step back and think about insecure, why would I be insecure? Look at everything that we've survived, everything we've gone through, look at what we've been capable of, and we can still be very insecure. So the Buddha took a look at this and said, why is this? And is it necessary? And so all of Buddhism is really coming from these Four Noble Truths: truth of suffering, cause of suffering, cessation of suffering, and then the path to alleviate that suffering. Suffering is doesn't really encompass the subtlety of what we call dukkha, the nature of existence, the unsatisfactory nature of our experience, the prison of our conditioning, but it's the commonly used word, and I think we can all relate to that. We have mental and emotional afflictions that we can feel insecure, that we can get nervous, that we can get angry, that we can get frustrated. And that this is very commonplace for us. We can have the best of conditions, great resources, and still feel like we're lacking. So he gave us this approach. First, the education about the nature of our existence, the causes of actual suffering, potential to cut off that suffering, eliminate those causes. And then the fourth noble truth is the path to eliminate, the methods. And so this has evolved throughout time. And 2,600 years later, here we are with a very different world experience, but not that much different in terms of an inward human experience. People still suffered, people still had the same causes. And over these period of time, since the Buddhist time to now, these teachings have been refined, they've been practiced, they've been broken down into different lineages, and they've been adapted to different cultures, and they've been utilized, and there's commentaries and there's explanations so that people can understand and practice them, so people can realize these teachings, be free of suffering. And so we've got these various traditions, Zen traditions, Theravadan traditions, Mahayana traditions, Vajrayana, and so forth. So all of this has made it all the way down to us. And the challenge often is that coming from an Eastern mind, coming from a different culture, the background I have today is Ladakh, India, borderlands of Tibet, where Lauren and I got to spend some time this year. A very different lifestyle than the one that we live in. And rather than try to adopt the culture, how do we extract the essence of these teachings? And how to extract them without losing the richness of the essence of these teachings. And that's really been the core of these 4 volumes that Thubten, Chödron, and His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama, collaborated on, is bringing this full Lam Rim stages of the path to enlightenment to the minds of people like us. So that's what we are getting to dive into, and we've been on the approaching the Buddhist path piece. So if you're new and just kind of joining in now, this is a great time. We've been laying a foundation, and then we're going to get into the Buddhist worldview. And having said all that, I do want to let people know if you have a question at any time or anything like that, you can, I believe, raise your hand, and we can have you unmute, ask a question anytime. So feel free and feel comfortable. Dialogue is very helpful during the teaching. All right, so let me pick up the text. So at this point, they've laid a foundation about the context and where Buddhism fits and works with these between religions and so forth. And now he's coming to this last section. I say he, it's actually Thubten, Chödron, and His Holiness, but a lot of this is literally through the voice of His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama. And here he's stating the broad perspective. Dharma practice is not comprised of simply one meditation technique. Our minds are far too complex for one meditation technique or one Dharma topic to transform every aspect of our minds. Although some newcomers to Dharma may want one simple technique to practice and may see progress by sticking to it, they should not think that in the long term, this is sufficient to generate all the realizations of the path. And so just pausing there at this moment, on one level, this may sound pretty straightforward. On another level, what has happened as the Buddha Dharma has made its way into modern cultures and the West and so forth, different, even psychologists, therapists, neuroscientists, practitioners, spiritual practitioners, teachers of different sorts, have found, one or two techniques or methods that are incredibly helpful. And, we have, mindfulness-based stress reduction, right? And, that's this now scientifically based model to reduce stress using a meditation technique and incorporated with some yoga and so forth. And that's great, and it's valuable. And we also have other examples of this that have made its way into even modern therapy and psychology. And so he's pointing out that this is not going to be a full Buddhist path. Those things are helpful, and we don't want to minimize that. A lot of people are not going to be in a full Buddhist path, and these things can be very helpful. But they're not going to be the path of awakening. So a lot of them will help people attenuate stress, like mindfulness-based stress reduction. It's right there in the title. This can reduce some stress. Okay, it's not the path of awakening. Doesn't mean it's not valuable. It means it's incredibly valuable. If lots of people, this is helping lots of people. But what we're doing here is explaining a complete, thorough Buddhist path and worldview. And again, you don't need to be a Buddhist to incorporate some of these methods into your life and improve the quality of your life. But he's going to make a point here that to really get the most out of it, it's essential that you grasp the complete worldview of Buddhism, which again doesn't mean you need to be a Buddhist. The Dharma encompasses an entire worldview, and practice necessitates examining all aspects of your life. Some of the Buddha's ideas will be new to you and may challenge some of your deeply held beliefs. Be open-minded and curious, investigate these ideas, and observe your mind. Check the teachings using reasoning and apply them to your life to see if they describe your experience. Let's check in with that. This is, nothing about Buddhism is this is the way it is. It's always, this is something to check. This is something to experience. Here's what we have found. And then it's for us to test it, check it, and see, does this hold up in my experience? And do not accept them simply because the Buddha taught them. And don't reject them simply because they're foreign to your existing ideas. And so, oops, sorry, didn't mean to click that button. The idea here is that we often will look for things that resonate with us, right? What resonates with me. And I like this, and I don't like that, and no, that doesn't make any sense. But what he's really doing here is providing within the Lam Rim the proper mind of a student, which is a discerning mind, an open mind, but an analytical mind, and discerning and checking. So instead of just finding things that already reinforce the mind that I have and things I like and avoiding things I don't like, no, there's no way to really make any progress there. I just kind of reinforce my experience. but to be open-minded, to be critical, to, yeah, so, that just doesn't make sense to me right now. That means don't reject it outright, just that doesn't make sense to me right now. Rebirth's a very common topic there. A lot of people just can't get their head around rebirth. And even though can't prove that it doesn't happen, right? Even though thinking the fact that your consciousness would die when your body does, that's kind of an act of faith too, right? We just don't think about these things. And so a lot of these things you can say, well, I don't know. And that's completely legitimate. Now, if you can prove it, well, that's different. And that's what he's having you check and test, prove, evaluate. But don't reject as though something is unfamiliar or unknown, that doesn't exist. A lot of things we can't exist and measure. I think I mentioned last time, things like love, right? Love exists. How can you measure it? How can you describe it? And you touch it. And so, but we all pretty much know it exists, right? So keep an open mind, but not just taking everything, check it. And if things don't add up or they don't make sense, put them in the don't add up, don't make sense. Now, if they're in the category of, oh, clearly I can prove this, well, stick with that. So here he's talking about this broader view. And he wants to encourage us to have a broader view. In other words, not a narrow, self-centered view of ourselves and our experience. So this broad view considers that many lives and many sentient beings will contribute to peace and happiness in our lives. That if we have this broad view, we're going to be happier. We're going to have more inner peace. That if we recognize our interactions and our interdependence with all others, that we're a part of a very big thing called life, we're going to have a lot more peace and happiness. But if we're chiefly engrossed with our personal happiness and problems and do not bother much about the happiness and suffering of others, our vision is quite narrow. We will encounter difficulties, such as a limited view. No, such a limited view will make us think that all the problems of the world have landed on us and we are the most unfortunate person alive. Why me? Why is this happening to me? This pessimistic way of looking at our own life will make it difficult for us to be happy here and now, and we'll drag ourselves through life day and night. On the other hand, if we have a wider view and are aware of the experiences of other sentient beings, then when we encounter difficulties, we will understand that unsatisfactory experiences are not isolated cases happening to us alone, but are the nature of cyclic existence. They happen to everyone. This mental attitude will help us to maintain stability in life and to face the situations we encounter in a productive way. So a lot there to say. Number one, let's not see ourselves as the center of the universe. Let's start there. Here we are. Here's everything else. It's either good for me or not good for me. And I evaluate everything in my world by whether I enjoy it, or I appreciate it, I value it, I like it, or I don't, or it bothers me, doesn't agree with me. And if we have that view, we're going to suffer a lot, right? Question is, when don't you have that view, right? How quickly do we evaluate? Well, there's the meal I would like. Here's the one I don't like. Here's, a person, they're kind of an idiot. There's a person, they're funny, I like them. Here's the person that I care about, and here's the events that I find pleasure in, the ones I don't. There's a whole lot of I in all of those. And then everyone that I'm experiencing, everyone I'm coming across, every event in my life is evaluated on a very simple measure. I enjoy it or I don't. People I value in my life, people who benefit me in some way or make me feel good in a certain way or do things or agree with me, have my values, have my political background, whatever. And people who don't, no, they're clearly idiots, losers. And, I don't know why they're sucking up air in this world and, wasting it on them. And, wow, how easily we do that, right? And how much suffering comes from that. I just flew out here to Texas, and I love traveling on planes. I love the experience of all of these people and what it takes to get a plane. It's fascinating to think about luggage and planes and people and pilots and the radar and the navigation, all the complex things that go on, let alone an airport and everything that's going on there. I mean, you think about ants and crawling around, just this complex thing that's happening, and how people could get frustrated because they don't get this one thing or that seat, or my bag doesn't get here or there. And others who are just really kind and helpful. And, you can see people helping people all the time at an airport. And you can see people very frustrated at an airport. And what a very simple contrast. I need it in my plane, my flight. This is late. Oh, my flight's on time. And it's interesting, my flight. Really? My flight? Not sure how many people were on it besides me, let alone all the people that give rise to it getting me here safely. But just, people could be human form, 2 legs, 2 arms, clothing, fed well, being able to go somewhere, being on a plane, and be absolutely frustrated. Where's the frustration coming from? Probably a pretty narrow view. And His Holiness is saying, let's just start with the fact that we are one among many. That the very life that we have only arises in dependence upon all these countless others. From a thing like having a Kleenex, I was thinking about Kleenex. How many people, how many animals, how many events are involved for me to have a Kleenex? It's innumerable. And how many lives were affected to create that, to get it here, and who was fed and who got an income and so forth. And a broader view understands our interdependence with everyone else in our experience, and has a natural concern that others are well, healthy, just like us, instead of a me first attitude. When it's a me first attitude, then things are happening to me, and then we become victims. And then things that are not a big deal in any context, like a delayed flight, can be an outrageous event. And an event you wouldn't even think about, 2 weeks later. So that's what His Holiness is sharing here, is that the more we have that narrow view, even the slightest things, somebody cutting someone off on a road can put people in rage. Pull it back up here. I don't want to get ahead of him. So this mental attitude will help us maintain stability in life and to face situations in counterproductive ways. So he's also saying that when we notice that, rather than evaluating the world by how it affects me, so if I get cancer or I have to have a surgery or some other challenge comes up. Poor me. But if let's say I get a cancer diagnosis, I might become aware that there's hundreds of thousands of other people with the same diagnosis as I have. And now I'm not just one victim. Now I understand I have a community like me that are trying to find their way through this. And immediately there's less suffering. And this is a common psychological approach therapists will use is to allow people to recognize they're not isolated in this type of event. So if I recognize in a broader view that everybody in this world that we're coming in contact with, they've all had their struggles, their worries, their fears, their medical conditions, their traumas, their joys, their successes, just like me. And that nothing that happens to me is going to be uniquely happening to me. And then I can find a lot of connection and community, understanding and recognizing that. And then when challenges arise, I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked. I recognize, life's messy. It's messy for everyone. And I'm much more prepared for it. Let's see here. I think that's what I left off with highlighting. So do we resonate with this, that we have an opportunity when we really primarily think about ourselves? There's instantly much more capacity for suffering, for dissatisfaction, for things not going the way I want, versus having an understanding of our interdependence with all beings, that life's a complex place, and a broader perspective about our capacity to participate with others, and that things that we do are helpful and hurtful, and things that others do likewise, that I'm a part of this big experience, and how that can become more true. That's the way things are. And as I engage more in that truth, I'm going to be much more resilient and don't need to take things so personally. So right off the bat, big view. Narrow view, a lot more suffering. Broader view, a lot more understanding, a lot more resiliency. We can recognize what we do have instead of the one thing that's not going my way. Okay. I assume we're getting it. Just pause there for a minute. I mean, take a moment, and last time we were frustrated, last time we were insecure, last time we were angry, how much of that had to do with the event itself, and how much of that had to do with, I didn't want this to happen to me. I don't think it should happen. It should be, I think it should be different. How much of that is really coming from, a very narrow view, evaluating the world in the case of I. So not something to just brush over. And, I know we can get some of these things intellectually, but they really can transform our lives when we can live there and really have that become a part of our lives. Okay, so a lot of this, these are very precious things that they have all unpacked. And again, this is not just His Holiness, not just Thubten Chödron. They're the two, and Thubten Chödron brought it to life. But this is discussions with other great spiritual teachers and geshes and highly trained Buddhist monastics. And so as they bring this together, now letting us know as we now go on to investigate other topics, it's important that you know that I am nothing special. This is His Holiness speaking directly. I am a human being just like you. We all have the same potential. And that is what makes one person's experience relevant and expressible to others. If you have the idea that the Dalai Lama is some extraordinary, special kind of being, then you may also think that you cannot relate to or benefit from what I say. That is foolish. I'm going to pause there. Carla has her hand up. And I'll ask you to unmute.
You've been talking a lot about lately about having a broader view, but it's such a deep, having a narrow self-centered view is so deeply ingrained and so insidious. It just, I start each morning after meditation with the best intentions, and then as soon as I hit the streets, that old habit pattern comes back to it just, my worldview just shrinks down into self-centeredness again. So I guess just a comment more than a question.
Yeah, no, thank you. Because I think everyone needs, to hear that. Everyone else is, probably thinking the same thing. And you're not alone, right? It's so ingrained in us. And here's the interesting experience of you're not the center of the universe, but that's the only way you experience the universe, right? Is through your mind. And it's so foundationally core to us to see ourselves as independent and this drive to have the things I like and avoid things I don't like, and that conditioning is so strong that that is the prison of samsara, and the unraveling of that is this wonderful process that takes time. And this is why I said it's not one practice, it's a way of living and bringing it into our day. And the thing that I like to emphasize with people is we will consistently, we'll hear a teaching like this and we'll go, wow, I have so far to go, which is what I'm going to get to with this Holiness's quote in a minute. Instead of recognizing how far you've come. Again and again, you will hear me say that. All of us here have come so far from that conditioned, self-centered, self-seeking way of living to a much greater capacity of understanding our connection to and interdependence with others, have more compassion, more loving kindness, more understanding. And so that means we've come an incredible way. If we are already here, for example, on a Wednesday night doing this, look how far you've come. But yes, apparently we're in the biggest room in the world, right? The room for improvement. And, there's more opportunity. Mark's had his hand up, so let me have him chime in. Can I unmute Mark?
Thanks, John. In that section that you just read from, you didn't put it up, by the way. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but you didn't put that section up on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
But I have it on my Kindle, so I was following it on my Kindle. Just before that section, that paragraph where I am a human being, just like you, he says, if we know and accept the unsatisfactory nature of cyclic existence, we will be in a much better position to deal with it when it occurs. We should not simply wait until a tragedy strikes us, but reflect on cyclic existence, learn about it, and have a method to face it. Can you just tell us what exactly cyclic existence he's referring to? Is that the process of rebirth?
Yeah, cyclic existence would be that pattern of rebirth. And in a context there, so what I was, just prior to that discussing was, I can, as I'm more aware of the struggles and happiness of others, I'm not going to be so surprised in my life. But what you're pinpointing very directly, which I'm so glad you hit that line, is if I can understand let's just say conditioned existence instead of cyclic. So cyclic is, aging, sickness, death, rebirth, aging, sickness. But within all of that, maybe we're not even at the idea that we have more. We can all recognize what we call samsara. So samsara is this experience we're all having. And in samsara, we are going to there's some things that are just fundamental in how it works, and that we can become aware of that things are impermanent, right? My house, guess what? That can be the source of my joy or the source of my suffering when the plumbing doesn't work, or, this happens, or my car, my life. And so the very pattern, the short teaching on that is what we call these marks of existence. So the 3 marks of existence. So if I understand how things exist, right? The world that we're having is samsara. That means it's a conditioned existence. It's governed by karma and how it exists. And number 1, I just mentioned, everything's impermanent. Okay, everything's impermanent. And the more I understand everything's impermanent, and what he's saying is the less you're going to suffer, because we try to make a lot of things permanent. Try to make my relationships permanent, my jobs permanent. I try to keep my house, or, once I get one, I try to make it, I'm going to get my life together, and then just, freeze everything, and put cellophane around it or something. And not going to work, right? Everything's impermanent. So everything is impermanent. The town you live in, the place you move to, things change, people change. I mean, look at the world we're living in, right? Very different than just a few years ago. And then each day is different. My body's impermanent. I'm different than I used to be. So if I understand impermanence, I'm going to suffer a lot less, because a vast amount of our mental, emotional suffering is trying to make things permanent that aren't permanent. Job, house, relationships, my body, et cetera, on and on and on. And that things change, come together, fall apart. So when we think about another of the marks of existence is that conditioned phenomena, we're getting all technical here, cannot provide you a lasting happiness, right? So, the house can't provide you lasting happiness. The partner can't provide you a lasting happiness. The job can't provide you a lasting happiness. The vacation in Hawaii can't provide you a lasting happiness. The whatever your hobby is can't do that. Whatever that is, the things that we chase to make us happy can never provide any lasting happiness. That's just the nature of things, right? I can have I'm pretty happy with the house I get to live in. Laura built it. It's a nice house, it's a beautiful town. And even with that house, believe it or not, I can sometimes be unhappy. It's shocking that I can have a house like that. And guess what? Sometimes be unhappy or insecure or frustrated. Right? Man, that's weird. I have this great house and I can still have all these other afflictive mental states. And as a matter of fact, the very things that we seek to provide us with lasting happiness are the things we usually have most stress, worry, and fear over, and pain. the people are closest to us when they get sick and so forth. And, worrying about losing the job, worrying about maintaining the house, or, wanting that vacation, not having that vacation, so forth. When we really look at the things that we stress and worry about the most, it'll be about the very things that we think will bring us, our happiness. Those things can provide conditions from which a lasting happiness can arise, for sure. So again, that's another mark of existence. And then the third one is ourselves, that we are not ourself, this identity, this personality, this ego, however I want to call it, John. John, again, is changing moment to moment. John is different than he was a few years ago. John is, you can't pinpoint John, right? This person that's arising right now, I'm arising right now as a Buddhist teacher. I'm pretty sure that's not how I was arising on the plane or in the Uber or checking into the hotel. No, that's not a Buddhist teacher, right? Now you're saying Buddhist teacher. Or when I was in the store next door. So sometimes I arise as a parent or a grandparent, or I used to be a history teacher, a little while ago as a pedestrian, not long before that as a commuter. Where's John? John's rising independence upon, these experiences and labels. And so we identified me and mine with that which is not me and mine. We really grab onto a sense of a self that is not accurate. I'm a patient person, I'm an impatient person. Well, have you ever been patient? Yeah, we've been patient. Have you ever been impatient? Yeah, you've been impatient. So why would you say you're an impatient person? Or are you a human, who's impatient sometimes? And even the very label of human, is that who you are? And so understanding the very nature of self, is that yourself arises in dependence upon this body, and it's changing moment to moment. And you're going to notice that your mind changes moment to moment. You can go from gratitude to frustration pretty quick, and likewise frustration to relief, and so forth. And that we are changing, and you can't pinpoint. There's not a self that's stagnant, solid. That dragging around every day. So if I understand that, then I'm going to suffer a lot less, because think about the mental afflictions of pride or insecurity. That has a lot to do with self, the self I'm identified with, in a way that I don't exist. So understanding the patterns then of the marks of existence, of a conditioned cyclic existence, things are impermanent, phenomena, will always, wind up with unsatisfactoriness and what we call misperception of self. That's what we'll unpack there. So as we go through these teachings, those will become more clear. But the amazing thing is, if you start to observe, and maybe that's a good thing this week, is can you have a mentally afflicted state, anger, frustration, worry, fear, insecurity, jealousy, whatever, that is not tied to a misperception? Trying to make something permanent, it's impermanent. Exaggerating the happiness or well-being that an event or person or thing can offer, or around your own sense of self. And I've been doing this a couple of decades, never found one time I couldn't pin it on one of those misperceptions. Maybe you will. If so, I'd love to hear about it next week. So, but if I understand that things are impermanent and that these events are not the source, ultimate source of my happiness or well-being, and that I am changing moment to moment. I'm malleable. I'm always becoming something. I'm not stuck. Man, think about the resiliency I have to flow in life, in the world I get to engage in. And if I understand how I change my attitude, I can change my experience of an event. If I don't expect things to go the way I want and understand that things unfold for a lot of different causes and reasons, and I can engage with what's happening in ways that are more productive and healthy, and get into problem solving instead of blaming, instead of being a victim. How about an opportunity to grow? Wow, my life's very different all of a sudden. And then what if I say I'm such an idiot? Well, okay, I did an idiotic thing. That's probably a pretty good thing. Or I'm such a wonderful person. Well, I did a wonderful thing. Those are more accurate. I'm not wonderful, and I'm not a good person. I'm not a bad person. I am someone in a human body that has done some good things, some horrible things, some kind things, have been patient, have been impatient. But our problem is we'll say, I'm this kind of person, not understanding that even science, everything shows that we are always becoming, we're changing, we're malleable, brain cells, everything. So that's the short answer to that very simple statement you brought up there. Hope it clarifies.
So in other words, our house might burn down. Our partner might leave us and decide they don't want to be with us anymore. The beautiful grandchildren that we loved and adored when they were young grow up to be opiate addicts and, steal and rob their way through life. And our perspective, though, can take all of those things and handle them if we can develop that capacity to have compassion, understanding, and look at life as not the permanent thing we'd hoped it would be. Correct?
And that all those things are normal and natural in this experience, right? Your house is not the only one that burnt down. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who got dumped by their partner. I don't know. I think Laura maybe has never been dumped. I don't know. But we've all ended relations. Like everything you said, that's happening to countless others. And understanding that. But also your joys too. There's a lot of, sometimes things happen that are quite wonderful. But we don't exaggerate that I need that to be happy, or that is the source of our suffering. So understanding that. Well put, Mark. I like those very clear examples. Very right on. Which gets me to His Holiness's quote, which I will post this time. I will bring it up on the shared screen. As we now go on to investigate other topics, it's important that I am nothing special. I am a human being just like you. We all have the same potential. And that is what makes one person's experience relevant and expressible to others. If you have the idea that the Dalai Lama is some extraordinary, special kind of being, then you may also think that you cannot relate to or benefit from what I say. That is foolish. This is incredibly important. You have the same Buddha nature as the Dalai Lama. You're not different in that capacity. And that's the point he's trying to make. Another teacher, Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, when asked how come, what's the biggest struggle with modern Western people with Buddhism, he said like the biggest one very clearly was that you don't believe in yourselves. We just have such a low view of ourselves. We don't recognize our own capacity. We see the Dalai Lama and we go, wow, there's the emanation of the Buddha of compassion. He is very special, and don't recognize that you have that same capacity. And he's trying to cut through that and say, you know, I'm a human being, and this capacity has been developed. Or from another view, you've always had it. It's just obscured by our conditioned mind. That your very nature is that Buddha nature. And you're not different than that. That capacity is within all of us, or it already is our nature, depending on the view. And this is important, I think. You know, I mean, I remember, you know, with my teachers, you know, of course I see them as, you know, just these amazing beings. And, but their emphasis is, you know, the reason they're, you know, able to be like that is simply because they did these practices. You know, you want to be a person who drives a stick shift, guess what? You know, learn how to drive a stick shift. Want to play a piano? Take some lessons. You know, want to run a marathon? Guess what? You know, start practicing, right? Go around the block a few times, build yourself up. That's what he's saying. He said, you know, what I'm sharing, you know, is just me talking to you, and we're not different in our capacity. And it's so hard to have that mind. You know, Alan Wallace, again, one of my teachers, primary teacher. You know, it's sometimes nice to have a Western teacher who speaks your language, kind of looks like you a little bit. And wow, here's someone who's done years of silence and meditation and can, you know, share from direct experience about things. Or Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo, you know, 12 years in a cave, you know, and you know, I sit there and, you know, she was a British woman, you know, father was a fishmonger, and you know, she went to India and started doing some practices. You know, we're not, you know, different. I was at a, yeah, it was a meeting last night, and, you know, a young guy, you know, was sharing, you know, it was interesting. We're in there, and he's you know, sharing how meditation's difficult for him, you know, and you know, it's just so hard. You know, I have ADHD, and, you know, and you know, and so it's really hard for me to sit, and you know, and I've tried these different things, and, you know, I just don't know if it's for me, and, you know, is there any tips, you know, and you know, and me with my silliness, I shared, wow, I've never heard that before. My God, I've never been in a room where someone said they had difficulty meditating and felt like their mind was all over the place. And he thought I was serious for a moment. And then I shared, I've never met someone who didn't say that. You know, and but we can feel so unique, right? And you know, I was like that, and still am some days. So, you know, we assured him, well, you've never meditated before. This is a new thing. Start slowly, get a little time in. If you do it, you know, it will become more natural for you. Oh, yeah. It's an interesting thing, you know, when again, something else I can identify with, I have an attention deficit disorder. So therefore, I have trouble doing things that would give me attention. And so I can identify with the disorder, and as though that will block me from the antidote. Maybe the antidote to an attention deficit is cultivating attention, right? And how do we do that? We you know, we sit down and we take these methods to cultivate attention. We can rewire our brains. I mean, there's all this clear research on all that. So here's these opportunities we have. We are not stuck. And His Holiness is letting everyone know that this capacity is within all of us. So if we can really, you know, just even if we don't buy it, you know, if we can be open-minded to the fact that you have that capacity within you. And then maybe, some very logical things that, wow, if I were to do some attention exercises every day, I might have better attention. Instead of some device, is looking for some device that will distract him enough so he can pay attention. And then I do want to get to this point. Our next session is going to get into the very nature of mind. But I want to introduce the topic. I know we've covered a bit of ground here. I want to throw one more thing out. And it sort of fits in here. So our next section of the book is the Buddhist view of life. And essentially, looking at time, I'm going to introduce mine in a very simple way, and we'll unpack this. What's going to be pointed out here is when the Buddhas are talking about the mind, they're not talking about the brain. Okay. A lot of science is pretty good at a lot of things. Neuroscientists can measure things in the brain. But in Buddhism, and it's actually outside of Buddhism now, even more modern neuroscience are really talking about mind in a different context than just brain. So we have a brain, it's an organ, it's in our head, and it's got, electricity and chemicals and, it fires, it does things. And I have this mind now, we'll unpack that, but a mind in Buddhism is our experience, right? Brain has chemicals and electricity. You have an experience. You have an experience, something you have clarity. So clarity and cognition, basically. Your mind is something that has clarity. It recognizes things, and then because of it cognizes things, it can interact with our experience. It can interact with another person. It can be aware of. It can mirror what's being experienced. So we have all these senses, ears, different entry points that we receive information. Sometimes not through any of those. Sometimes in our dreams. And and this mind is our experience. And we'll say things like, my mind wasn't here, or I don't know where my mind is. Well, we pretty much always know where our brain is. Okay, brain's up there. And so, just wanted to start the conversation of understanding that we have an experience that's much bigger than our organs. And we call this mind. And so in this next section that we'll get into in Buddhist worldview is understanding mind. And the one thing that Buddhists have been able to do is really explore the mind, the different factors of mind, the capacity of mind, the potentials, which have not been really measured at all by modern Western science. Don't really know how to identify or even really define consciousness or mind and experience. And what Buddhists have been doing for 2,600 years is exactly that. So next week, we will explore the mind a little bit. This week, though, if we look at 3 marks of existence, you kind of notice if I am angry, insecure, happy, happy is not going to work. It can work, but let's make it more concrete. Anything that's more afflictive in a negative way, and C is that arising from me thinking, it should be different. I would be happy if only, if they were different, or if, things wouldn't change, or, what's really going on. And does that accord with the very nature of our experience? So these three marks of existence kind of check in when you have strong negative emotions, and explore, are they grounded in something that is true? Or is it how you are identifying with yourself and how you're labeling the world through how the world should work for you, being the center of the universe, and expecting things to go the way you would like. All right. Well, such a joy to join you. Looks like I'm in Ladakh, but I'm actually at a Holiday Inn in Elgin, Texas. And but hopefully with you in spirit wherever you are. Real honor to be able to keep these opportunities available no matter where we are. So thanks so much for joining us and for all the good that you bring to the world.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om